Probiotics, can they make you smarter? Or is there such thing as bacteria that can actually make you dumb? What is the relation between probiotics inside your body and brain function? Researchers today are studying this widespread as there seems to be a second brain in the gut. And today we're going to go into this. I'm joined with Katrine Valinsky. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Wade.
It's great having you here. And there seems to be this long history of you've got a gut instinct or you have this. Now science is proving there is a second brain in your stomach or in your digestive system, which seems remarkable. What is the latest research you're saying? Can probiotics actually make you smarter, or is it that they make you more efficient?
Well, let's say flora can't raise your IQ.
Darn.
Per se, that's what we at least think right now.
Right now.
No, but there is definitely a correlation between a person's. It's funny because there is a correlation between a person's IQ and their health levels. So for people whose IQ, let's say, is not as high, they seem to be not as fast in picking up on things that are health relative. They'll get more heart attacks. They'll get more chronic issues. So which one comes first? Their health issues, and then you have a lower IQ, or the other way around? Or is it the wiring? Right?
Well, it's a good question, because I think in some of the other series that we've done, we've talked about the role of nutrition and how probiotics are essential to bringing nutrients in the body. And I do believe, and of course this isn't proven yet, but I do believe from what I've studied is that, especially in those formative years, in the young years, as your brain is developing, ensuring that you have the proper bacteria strains would lend a person at least to maximize their genetic inheritance or IQ.
Exactly. So that's kind of my feeling as well. And we know that our brain and our gut are connected. They're connected through a vagal nerve that runs from our brain to our gut. Our gut makes all these chemicals and neurotransmitters that play in messaging. They message.
Like serotonin, dopamine, things like that.
Yeah, you actually have the feel-good neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine produced in large quantities in the gut. Almost all of your serotonin is actually produced in the gut, and half of your dopamine, that chemical that makes you calm and reserved. So there has been quite a few studies showing that people with depression and anxiety, after taking a course of probiotics of 30 days, had a reduction in symptoms. So that's been like human studies, and there's been a lot of studies on mice, which of course mice don't have the same digestive system as we do, but there has been studies showing that sterile mice, mice that was devoid of any bacteria, had all sorts of social issues, anxiety, they were not as quick at solving the mazes, things like that. And when bacteria was introduced, like bifidobacteria, that's quite studied.
Good probiotics.
Yeah, the good probiotics.
Right.
The bifidobacteria class of bifidobacteria, like Infantis, that is produced in babies and humans in large quantities, was introduced to mice. Or the lactobacillus species, their mice became, let's say, the mice that were shy became more bold, they became smarter, they had less stress response, and the research is continuing on this subject. It's definitely something that is very interesting. There is one specifically right now that's kind of been making waves in the last couple of years, and we're waiting to see the results on that study, but there's evidence showing that manipulating your gut microbiome or the good bacteria and the types of good bacteria can change your response to life, and it will change the ability of you to be able to focus, to maybe retain information better because your brain is functioning better. And overall, usually if your microbiome is in a better shape, you will feel more energized, more happy about life. So that would usually lead in more self-motivation, maybe more leadership, more ability to absorb information. So there's definitely correlations between the health of the gut biome and your happiness and brain activity levels.
Well, I've noticed with our clients, like the thousands and thousands of people, as they've integrated a healthier lifestyle and added probiotics, and they're, without a doubt, pretty much across the board, everyone reports an increased sense of mood and feeling good about themselves, and also an improved ability to concentrate, less brain fog when you wake up in the morning. Mm-hmm. Can you let's talk a little bit about brain fog particularly, because I think a lot of people today wake up in the morning and they have that groggy feeling, and from my understanding and the research that I've looked at is that the bad bacteria if they're consuming sugars and chemicals and this sort of stuff, actually produce chemicals that inhibit our body from functioning properly. So it's not a question of IQ, but it is the efficiency of our brain.
Well, exactly, that's what you said. The bad bacteria that ferments the sugars and some of the other food particles, let's say, that come into larger quantities into large intestine will produce byproducts of respiration, and also will take some of the nutrients, they'll compete for the nutrients that usually will help us process information better or make our cells function better or have better brain functioning, things like B vitamins and micronutrients, trace minerals. All of these things are playing a role in how our brain is working and how our immune system is functioning. So those bad bacteria will compete for these also and take them in, and there's going to be less available for the body to synthesize, so we can use those. Right? So, does that make sense?
Yeah, I totally
so there's byproducts, and there is also competition for nutrient sources. Yeah, and there's types of specific chemicals that are produced by bad bacteria that is really inhibiting our brain functioning, and it's also been showing a effect on anxiety levels and psychological mood in general.
Well, that's really fascinating. So for the person starting out, maybe there's someone that's feeling they've had trouble with concentration, or they've gone through a period where they're having that brain fog or inability, or massive sugar cravings. I know is another common thing when you have a bacterial imbalance. What is your suggestions for how then they can use probiotics in a way that can improve their, let's say, brain functioning or brain efficiency?
Well, the most interesting way would have been like to test microbiome first, and then make adjustments, and then see how you actually.
How do you test the microbiome?
Microbiome testing is available nowadays to consumer. There's a couple of companies called one is called Ubiome, one is American Gut Project, where you can send a sample of the skin or swab of a cheek or a stool sample, and they will send you a list of species that are currently like active in your body. There's a little bit of controversy around the testing mechanism, because it's, you can get a little bit different results between, let's say, if you went to both of the companies, just because there is no standard, there's no standardized testing procedures. But in general, you will be able to see the prevalent species. So it's like the most, you might not be able to see some of the smaller colonies, you wouldn't get like the best, let's say, grasp of the smaller colonies and the different subspecies, but the big ones, you will know what you have more of or less. So that would be interesting to test first, and then make adjustments to your diet, make adjustments to your supplement protocol, and then test later. Or if you have tested your microbiome and then taken antibiotics, let's say, and then testing after to see what you wiped out. So that's kind of fun things, but not all of us have the luxury to play around with, but it's definitely something that a lot of people who are interested in health are kind of getting into. But in general, things that you can do to increase your brain activity, not brain activity, but brain function, is taking care of your diet. Obviously, there is a lot of foods that are contributing to that. And interesting enough, they're also the foods that will contribute to the microbiome, getting better on the good side of bacteria, other than instead of the bad, right? So feeding your body prebiotic foods like asparagus, artichokes, chicory root, garlic, those are all of the type of fibrous foods, all of the foods that will help you create those strong colonies of good bacteria, and then maybe supplementing with specific strains too. Like, for example, we know that Bacillus strain, which is a spore strain, and if you're handling that soil-based organism as well, you might be wanting to use. So Bacillus tends to produce more serotonin. So if you have issues with serotonin, you know that you just generally, maybe genetically or just through the history, your health history showing that you might have low levels of serotonin, that's something you might want to introduce. Things like bifidobacteria have been shown to make more GABA. So if you want to feel calm, and
GABA is a neurotransmitter inside the brain that allows for calmness or relaxation.
Exactly.
It's using, a lot of green tea might have GABA as well, right?
Yes, true. Let's say what else. We also have, I'm sorry, Bacillus was the dopamine. But the Bacillus bacteria, the spore-based bacteria, helps you produce more dopamine. Yeah, the Streptococcus, which is, if you think of Streptococcus, you probably heard strep.
Right, I had strep throat. I had strep throat as a kid,
Yes.
repeatedly, over and over and over again. When I first heard Streptococcus, I'm like, oh no, not that.
So Streptococcus is actually a species, and there's all sorts of different species of bacteria. Right. So Streptococcus bacteria can be also beneficial. So there is some categories of this bacteria that's beneficial and it's helpful with immune system and your actually mouth health and nasal and health. So that type of bacteria also tends to produce more serotonin. And Enterococcus is another type of bacteria that produces serotonin. So we've been studied already which types of categories of and species of bacteria tend to produce certain neurotransmitters. So you kind of can play around with that and maybe use some of the some of the supplements available and use higher strains, higher numbers of certain bacteria depending on what kind of issue you have.
Great. So for the person that's looking to enhance cognitive performance or brain enhancement, again, we'll just kind of go through a simple, easy process that they would use. Is number one, get
hydration.
Number one, get lots of water inside the body. Number two, keep the blood sugar stable.
Keep the blood sugar stable. Have good fats.
Good fats.
Have your diet full of whole foods and prebiotic
foods. It's going to feed the good guys. Use a probiotic supplement before you go to bed. We talked about that in a bit, so that you're making sure that you're cleaning up any bad guys inside the system and making sure you reset that.
And working on establishing stronger colonies of those good bacteria that are producing good chemicals for us, the feel-good chemicals.
Wow, that's really great. And so if you're out there and you've been struggling with maybe cognitive performance or felt that you weren't at your best all the time, I think probiotics and following those dietary recommendations can be very helpful. I know there's a lot of anecdotal research that's supporting that, and science is now studying this because things like brain fog and are impairing or lack of focus, and they could be dietary relation to that. So I want to thank you for joining us today, and of course check back with the website to see some of the latest cutting research in regard to this field about can probiotics make you smarter.